Welcome, class, to the Intro to Java Programming. In this lesson, we will review a static method called main, along with the syntax, the reason for static main, and some code examples. The purpose of static main is to start everything. Your Java application will be looking for a specific method signature to start. That would be public static void main. Public is an access modifier that allows access to other outside classes. Static is a keyword that allows access to static members of the class without creating or instantiating an object of the class. Void means the method will not return a value. Main is the method name Java is looking for to start the application. Static is a necessary keyword used in every project and is often confusing to junior-level developers. For more detailed information, visit the lesson on static. Let's review a few key points. Static is a keyword used mainly for memory management of properties, methods, code blocks, and nested classes inside a class. It allows access to static members of the class without creating or instantiating an object of the class. Memory management is an important part of this definition to understand. The following examples are intended to be a general understanding for beginners and is not exactly how memory management works. Please do additional research if interested. Inside the computer is a big area of memory available for everything. This area holds the code for the application, including the classes. This area holds the variables and other things created by the application. When the application is first started, the code and the classes exist here, and no variables or objects exist here. The only code that can be executed is a static method. This is why we need public static void main. The string array args is an optional parameter that can be passed to your application when it is started. Normally, there is another process that will make a command line request to start your Java application. The command line request will include the file name of your application. Optional parameter arguments can be passed in by adding a space and a string value. Here, two arguments are being passed in, Coach and Joe. These two values will be placed in the string array args. Element 0 of the args array is equal to Coach, and element 1 is equal to Joe. Passing in arguments when the application starts can be very useful. Can all your code go in the main method? Interesting. Not a good idea. Like with all methods, you should follow the rules of encapsulation. Here are two rules that stand out for the main method. Coach Joe rule number 7 states, a method should do only one thing. A method should only perform one action. If a method performs more than one action, this is known as a side effect and could be misleading to other developers. Coach Joe rule number 22 states, methods should have very few lines of code. Methods should ideally have 5 or less lines of code. 15 or less is satisfactory. However, as more lines of code are added, is the method performing one action? The main method has one responsibility. Instantiate an object responsible for running the application and calling the initial starting method. This can be done with very few lines of code. Imagine we have a class called main entry point. This class will have the main method. There is another class called app_start. This class is responsible for passing any string parameters and starting the application with the run method. The run method will control the flow of the entire application. Here is an example of the main method inside the main entry point class. The main method should instantiate the app_start class and call the run method. This could be simplified to create new app_start class and call the run method. Try to remember, the purpose of the main method is to instantiate an object and call the method that controls the flow of the application. Why does the main method need to instantiate the app_start class? If you recall from the lesson on static, there are a few basic guidelines to follow. Instance members can access static members. Static members should not access instance members with few exceptions. And static members should not access other static members with few exceptions. Time for a Coach Joe challenge question. Main is a static member. Instance members can access static members. Static members should not access instance members. Static members should not access other static members. The application is trapped by these guidelines. How does the main method start the application and still follow the guidelines for static? Correct. One exception is the main static member will access an instance member to start the application. The appStart class is instantiated. The run method is called. The appStart object is now an instance member. It can access other instance members and static members. You are no longer trapped by the static guidelines. From this point, you should be able to follow all the basic guidelines for using static members. In an upcoming lesson, we will cover the code in the appStart class. Let's look at some code next. Open the first program project in IntelliJ, close any open class tabs. Let's create a new package called Start. Let's create a new class called appStart. Let's make some space, copy in this first method. This method will be called by main. It accepts a string array parameter called args. For this example, the only code that appears is the printed message, application started. Later, code used to control the application will be here. Let's create another class called main entry point. Make some space, copy in the main method. Here is the method signature, public static void main needed by Java. Here is a string array parameter called args. Inside the code block, the run method is called from the appStart class. This line creates an object variable for appStart, and this line uses the object to call the run method. This line accomplishes the same thing with one line of code. Feel free to use either approach. Inside the IntelliJ IDE, notice there is a green arrow next to the main method signature. I can click the arrow, select Run Main Entry Point, and the application starts. Notice the output below. Java is starting the application. Here is our output, application started, and the process finished, the application ends. Let's change the name of the main method. Replace main with Start My App. Notice the green start arrow disappeared. IntelliJ does not recognize this method as one you can run like main. Let's change the name back to main. Now let's change the access modifier to private. Notice the green start arrow disappeared. Let's change it back to public. Here's a summary of all the code we wrote for this lesson. You should now have an understanding of static main and its purpose for starting an object-oriented application. The syntax and code examples for static main were provided along with a brief review of the guidelines for static members. In the next lesson, we'll discuss the keyword final. Remember, future senior developers, make it work, prove it works, then make it better. Ready? Break!